I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the city recorder please call roll?
Mayor Jackala.
Present?
President Steinhebel. Here. Councilor Conti. Here. Councilor Angelford.
Here.
Councilor Savage.
Here.
Councilor McLean. Here. Councilor Workman.
Here.
Thank you. We'll move on to consent calendar. Following items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussions on these items unless a councilor so requests. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. We only have one thing on there tonight. It's the agenda, Lebanon City Council agenda, March 25th, 2026. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve the consent calendar. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. No presentations. We'll move on to public comments. Citizens may address the council by filling out a testimony card prior to speaking and hand it to the city recorder. Each citizen will be provided up to 5 minutes to provide comment to the council. The council may take an additional 2 minutes to ask clarifying questions. City recorder will accept and distribute written comments at speaker's request. We have a couple tonight. First up, if we could get the 5-minute clock, please. Aaron. First up is Dr. Elaine Wilder.
Okay if I stand?
As long as we can hear your voice and it's recorded.
I'm pretty loud. So. Good evening, councilors. I'm Dr. Elaine Wilder. I've been in Lebanon almost 6 years now, and I came from St. Lucie, Missouri to join the faculty of the Department of Physical Therapy Education. So tonight, though, I'm representing the aquatics, the district. And just to give you an update on what's going on, about a year and a half ago, I was at a meeting and heard that the pool might be closing because there weren't funds for needed repairs. And that really piqued my interest because I came from a small town where the pool was really important to the community in North Carolina. And so anyway, for the last year, I was first on the budget committee and now I'm a director. And we have been working very hard to secure funds in cooperation with the school district. So the school district was giving $500,000, we were giving $250,000, and we pared it down so that the cost would be $1.2 million with a shortfall of $400,000 where we've been seeking funds and we were just about ready to go. And then last Monday night after the pool meeting, we were told that the school had decided to pull their $500,000 because of loss of teacher pay. So at any rate, though, this is a real blow to us who have worked so hard. I mean, if you think about the pool, there's a swim club, there's a swim team. We give swim lessons to all third graders. If you go at 5:30 in the morning, you're going to see a group of very dedicated women doing their swim time and people doing laps. We have all kinds of lessons. We're almost full now as far as swim lessons. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention because right now we're trying to think about ways how to proceed, probably in the shortfall. And we're working with Will Lewis, and he was also pretty heartbroken at the decision. And I understand that, but knowing what it means to the community to have a pool, I just wanted to bring it to your attention. We're looking for options now, and a group from a private group called Boston Hub had just gifted us a fully new website. I said the other night at a meeting that I think our website was the same age as the pool, which is 67. So, that was a great gift. And we've also been working with Peak Internet. So we've been working really hard for the funds. So right now we're trying to decide what to do next. And probably in the short term, we'll be looking at trying to still secure some funds and to do repairs on the drain. I'm not a Debbie Downer, but just so you know, I've been a physical therapist for most of my life, and I've worked with many children and adults. I'm an educator, university educator. But one thing I do know is it would just take one slight thing, like a small earthquake, or a flooding to crack that foundation on the pool. And if that happens, I'm not sure that we'll have an option. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention in case you might have some ideas about how we might approach this issue of not having the funding to do the needed pool repairs. But I thank you for giving me the time to speak to you tonight.
Thanks
All
for
righty,
coming.
thank you. Does anybody on the council have any questions or comments?
One quick question. I know, weren't you eligible or going for a grant or some sort of appropriations bill too? Or
Yeah, we've been looking at all kinds of grants and funding, but we came to the point, we were at 1.8 was what we were thinking it was going to take to do the repairs, so we pared it down to the 1.2. And so it was going to be the 500,000 plus the 250. We're always looking for extra funding. And we've got people, like for example, the steps that go into the warm pool fractured about a month ago, and we had to replace those at a cost of $5,000. 2 swimmers gave $1,100. But in spite of the fact that we're constantly looking for grants, I mean, this is a time when everybody's looking for money. I mean, some of you I know because I'm on groups with you and we're looking for money. But we're doing the best we can, and I'm not saying we're stopping, because that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention tonight, just to let you know what was happening and the fact that, I mean, I've been here for almost 6 years, and I love Oregon, and I love Lebanon. You know, my daughter's trying to get me to come back, and I'm like, no, to Missouri. So I'm staying here, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention in case any of you have any thoughts, any ideas about how we might look for the funds that we need to provide a really important part of the Lebanon community.
All righty, thank you so much. Next up tonight, Jason Williams, please come forward.
Not this guy again.
This guy filled out a public testimony card, and he said, "Can we sing Ron happy birthday?" And you're going to have to lead this.
No problem with that.
Okay, so
like a kazoo or something, or a harmonica?
Can we confirm it's
Make
Ron's
sure we're on
birthday?
the right
I think pitch is gonna be the problem.
It's off.
ready?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ron. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'd say thank you.
Speech.
Jason, you might as well sit down because you're the first up. So we're moving to regular session. The congratulations and happy birthday.
39 again.
We'll move on to regular session. First on the agenda tonight is the Kennedy Jenks wastewater treatment plant design contract approval.
Thank you, Mr.
Jason
Mayor.
Williams.
Members, council, please protect me when Ron comes after my job tomorrow morning.
39
I
squared.
ask for your support. I'm here before you tonight to ask for approval of the engineering service contract with our consultant Kennedy Jenks. The contract is going to get us 30% design plans so we can better tune in exactly what we need for funding and cost estimating. It'll also start at critical paths to the project, like the environmental, some of the other engineering and architectural, transportation, and the land surveying that needs to be done as part of that early pre-engineering work. So happy to ask any questions. The contract is $2,187,000 and change.
Change.
All righty. Questions, comments?
I think we've heard this stuff before.
Yeah. It's just a reminder that for everybody that's out there on the internet, that these are issues that we dig into quite regularly, and by the time we get to this point, we can regurgitate all the information. So, is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve the contract. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
I knew I'd get a laugh at her when I do that now. We'll move on to Public Defender contract renewal for the City of Lebanon. Finance Director.
Before you is a renewal or an extension of an existing contract for the public defender. We've had this public defender for, I think this will now be the second renewal. There was 2 3-year terms in advance of this. I have checked in with municipal court staff, with the municipal court judge, with the city attorney. Everybody has said that the public defender has done a very good job at assisting those who are going through our court system and who need a public defender and don't have the means and methods to get an attorney on their own. So we've put together this contract for you. It's I think it's like 23 months, because the last contract, I was trying to keep the same cycle with having it expire at the end of February. We did add a 5% increase to the amount that the public defender was getting, which was in line with CPI over the last 3-year contract. And I can certainly answer any questions that you might have.
No questions or comments? Okay. Is there a motion to renew this contract?
I move to renew it.
Second.
Motion's been made to renew the contract. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we're moving on to consulting guidance for municipal jail levy process. Information only. I'm going to turn it over to city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This week, we got the results of the poll back to see what it would be moving forward with the municipal jail levy. Tonight online, we have J.L. Wilson, who is the pollster, and Sean Tate, who is our consultant lobbyist. And they are here. Actually, J.L. is probably here to walk you through the results of the poll. Feel free to ask him any questions. And I will turn it over to him, and it's actually nice to meet you.
Pleased to meet you, and thank you. Do you have the poll document in front of you? So if I moved along with it, you could follow along?
Yes, they have that document.
Okay. So let me just go with some of the recitals. Betsy and Sean contacted me asking for a little guidance on how to determine voter attitudes about a proposed levy to reopen the municipal jail. And so we proceeded with the construction of a survey instrument that's really designed to do a couple of things. First, just see prevailing attitudes about the police department and sense of priority about reopening the jail. We do ask the direct question in Q4, which is called the initial ballot question, which is what we give people with, we give them just the basic context. Don't use any leading language or anything meant to cause bias in the response. Just this is what you get, this is what will cost. Yes or no. It is meant to be an analog to what they might see on the actual ballot. Then we will go through a series of questions that I call the If You Knew series. And the If You Knew series is really designed to isolate one piece of information. And what it does is it helps your consultant figure out what to focus on. And I do think the value of this survey is that there are very clear things to focus on, and everything else just needs to be put on the shelf. We ask a few emotional response questions, and I will get into those because one of those questions I've actually found to be the most predictive of what the voter response will be. And then we ask what we call the informed ballot, which is we lead people through sort of the car wash of questions. And then we re-ask the question, okay, now that you've heard all this stuff, do you support or oppose? So that's kind of the run of show. And we tried to do that in the most cost-effective, minimalist approach that we could. We tried to get a 300 sample, just, the city of Lebanon, just in pure pollster speak, We have about 8,600 files that for contact there. Typically, just for your reference, I tend to like to we usually get about 300 valid responses with 10,000 files. So we had to work just a little extra to get to close to 300 valid responses, but I think we got enough to give you some informed decision points and just an informed way to make a decision. So having said all that, with respect to the sample size, 296 valid responses. When I say valid responses, we do go through after the fact. Not every response is a valid response. Some people terminate. Some people are there. There's clear indicators where it's not a serious exercise, and we weed those out. So we got 296 valid responses, a margin of error rate of about 5.7%, which to me is it's meaningful and good enough to make some decisions from. With respect to the demographics, we try to get what we think will be a voter profile for the election in question. So in this case, although typically the male-female ratio breaks out to about 47-53 in Lebanon, there was just a slight oversample on the female side of 54 for this survey. I would say there was a slight lean toward the age 60 plus, which is who you're going to see predominantly in these money elections. I wanted to test it at about an R plus 12 or R plus 13, which is the party composition of your town, so that we got the right cross section. And then you'll see the voter history, because I'm going to put a little more emphasis on those that they'll show up on your crosstabs, a 3 of 4, 4 of 4. They're your higher propensity voters that we know will show up every time. Whereas your 1 of 4 is, sometimes they vote, sometimes they don't, and oftentimes they don't vote on the municipal questions. And then of course we try to break up as evenly, distribute the sample among the 3 wards as we can. And sometimes, in a smaller community like Lebanon, we just get what we get. But I felt pretty satisfied that the sample was representative. You have some information here that you can make a decision from. So I'm going to go back to the Q1 and just talk a little bit about the operation and performance of the police department, and basically the approval rating in at about 67%, which is pretty good. It's pretty standard. There's what I'm really looking for is there a hole in the boat? Is there a trust issue that would have downstream effects? And there is not. So that question I thought checked out and was well within the range of what I typically see for police departments, sheriff's offices, and the like. How important is it to you to reopen the Lebanon Municipal Jail? You had 63.7 give a positive response. That to me says, most people are willing to give this the benefit of the doubt, because all things being equal, they would like to see it reopened. I'd be concerned if this number was less than 60, but it was not. And so I think that in terms of, is there community sentiment that supports generally the reopening of the jail? I think you could say yes, and that is not a hole in the boat for us. On the initial ballot question, I mean, I am just going to be honest, and just the facts here. When you give people the information, the background information, what we're purporting to do and what the cost, the support number comes in at 48.5, 48.6. That's not a winning number, obviously. I typically like to see numbers come in 60 plus in order to feel like it has a reasonable chance for success. Now, I'm going to bookmark that comment, because the other parallel thing that is not mentioned in the initial ballot, and we would not ask this in the initial ballot because a voter is not going to see it on their ballot, which is that it will be offset by the cost of a bond that is coming off the rolls. and there will be an offset effect that basically makes this a zero sum or perhaps a tax cut. If we frame it as a tax cut, it's just too hard to explain, and people, but when you frame it as we're going to reopen the jail and with no increase in your tax rate, that's a completely different question, and we do ask that later on. But let me focus on the initial ballot question at 48.6. I would never advise somebody to move forward if I saw that number come in at 48.6, because I know that there are campaigns and whisper campaigns and things like that that develop in communities that really oppose tax increases. And so 48.6, it literally cannot pass on its own. And I do expect that those numbers to come down. So the 48.6, in my professional opinion, is not a winning number. But we know that there's more to the story. So we get into the if you knew questions. The if you knew questions are really designed to isolate one piece of information and ask the respondent if they knew this piece of information was true, would it change your feeling about the measure? And what I'm really looking to do in our case is to measure the support against the 48.6% baseline. And so I'm looking to see which data points move the dial the most for us. And then we're going to focus on those data points if we decide that we want to ask the question of voters. There are a litany of things that work in your favor with respect to the measure, but I would say it's kind of around the edges. Question 4, that it would allow you to hire 7 new corrections officers. Obviously, that ratchets up support about 5.8 points from the baseline. That's good, but it's not great. You're not gonna end up making this argument. Question 5, if you knew that the jail operating levy would replace an expiring levy and that taxpayers would not see an increase in their property tax rates, would you support or oppose the levy? Now you're at 66.3. So what that tells me is that if you decide to move forward with it, this has to be your top message. Everything you send out has to hammer home the point that this is not going to result in a change in your property tax rates, and that in fact a bond coming off the rolls will allow people to be able to vote yes on this and not see a change. You can further on explain that they'll actually see a cut. I'm more focused on, a simpler question, which is, will people see a change or not? And they will not. You'll see that this moves the dial a great deal. And so when I go back to the Q4 and we initially come in at 48.6, now I see if people know that it's not going to result in an increase in their property tax rates, now people have a different view of it at 66.3. And so that to me is one of those things that I kind of have to bake into my thinking now, is like, do we have a chance to pass the message or pass the measure if our top message is, in fact, you will not see an increase in your property tax rates? And I would conclude that yes, you do have a chance to be successful if that is message 1A. And so I'm just going to hold that there as one of the silver lining pieces for you that I think should be baked into your thinking. We asked a question about sort of the cost effectiveness of the current system where you're transporting offenders to Lynn County Jail. Obviously that moved people, but in the scope of a campaign, when you're just not going to have the ability to make 5 different arguments and you're really going to have to focus on 2 or 3, I probably would not focus on that one. If you knew, going to question 7, if you knew that the jail's closed, since the jail's closure in 2023, offenders committing misdemeanor crimes are now arrested and released back into the community, would you support or oppose? That was a decent mover, at about 10.1 points off the baseline. I probably would be making that argument as argument 1B. And so no increase in tax rates that currently, now because of the jail's closure, these folks are arrested and moved back in the community. Question 8, if you knew that reopening the Lebanon Municipal Jail would reduce repeat offenses and increase community safety, would you support or oppose? 66% support. I'm sorry, it's Q8 is the one that I would be making alongside the no increase in my tax rates if I had to make two arguments. So those two arguments really embodied in Q8 and in Q5 are the main two arguments in tandem that I think at least give you the chance to be successful with this measure if you want to move forward, because you have two that really move the dial with all subgroups. Q9, if you knew the operating levy would cost property taxpayers $1 per thousand. We asked this question, it's sort of the fly in the ointment question, because we just need to give them the cost, because that's what they're going to see on the ballot question. And even then, the support went down to about 46, which is not great, but it's not a huge drop in support from the baseline. And so it tells me that there's probably a floor of support for you somewhere around 45, 46% that you can build from with those two messages of not increasing the property tax rate and stopping sort of the cycle of repeat offenses. I asked the agree disagree series typically just to elicit an emotional response. On these, we do introduce a little bit of bias into the question. Some people say, well, it's, you know, this is a push-pull. It's not, the technique is to get sort of an emotional response to the question. And so Q11, again, is a validation of Q5, which is if the city is asking local taxpayers for an operating measure to reopen the municipal jail without increasing property tax rates, I would support the measure. You had 70% agreement with that statement, which tells me that if you want to move forward, that has to be your primary message. People have to understand that. That's just not a negotiable. Conversely, Q11 is the question that I referenced, where I have found this question to be more predictive than basically any other question we ask. And the reason why is most times people vote no on something. They're not voting no because they oppose the police department or don't want the jail open. It's really because their personal economics are, they're in a tough spot economically, and they just don't feel they can personally absorb the cost. And so it is not what we try to do is we try to shift the focus on the economy and really get into people's personal economics and just say, listen, this is not an indictment of the police department, but in this economy, would you agree or disagree that it's not a good idea to add a $1.7 million operating levy? And I would vote no on the levy and let the current bond expire to have a property tax cut. You did have close to 50% agreement with that, and that's concerning to me. Not as concerning as if the number would have come back in the 50s, but it's still a little concerning to me because I call that number sort of what we call a critical resistance, which is the headwind that you have. It just tells me that your job, because people are automatically predisposed to giving the jail and the levy the benefit of the doubt, your job then becomes to convince them that they will not see an increase in their property tax rate as a result of their yes vote. So that's why Q11 is important, because it really shifts the focus on not to the project, but to people's personal economics and sort of gives them an off-ramp to say, hey, I can't afford it. Q12, I just want to get a sense of whether people think it's important for one of the arguments we want to make about community safety and preventing catch and release. I don't think it's as an effective of an argument as we see in Q8 when we talk about reducing repeat offenders and repeat offenses and increasing community safety. But it still tells you that a majority of your community is on board with that sentiment. And so some version of that argument is worth making. And then finally, I just wanted to get a sense of whether the jail was a priority or not in the scheme of things. And so we have question 13, and it really produced a response that I don't feel like I got great information from it, where it was sort of a 50-50 split. And you had about 18% of your respondents that just simply didn't know. But we asked the question, I don't believe that a $1.7 million levy to reopen the jail is a priority at this time. I would vote no. 41-41. I just didn't feel like it gave me great information. And so it's good to know that there's, I didn't feel like there was overwhelming resistance, but I didn't feel like there was, overwhelming, support. And so then we ask the informed ballot question, and we have led people through these series of questions. I call it the car wash. And then you come out the other end, and then you ask people. And what happened was interesting, because what I think people heard and wanted to believe is that, wait a second, I didn't think my property tax was going to go up $1 per thousand. But restating the question in Q14, we do restate that it's $1 per thousand. So where I think most people ended up parking their vote, or more people ended up parking their vote in the unsure. So you had the support come down a little bit. You had the opposition also come down, and some people park their vote in the unsure. So, what to make of that? It's the same exact conundrum that your consultants are going to have to figure out how to overcome, which is officially you're going to have to tell people it's $1 per thousand. But your messaging is going to need to drive home the point that, in fact, it will not increase their property tax rates because you're going to have a bond expire and it will be coming off the books. And so that's the push and pull of this measure. When people understand that a levy's coming off the books and this won't increase their property tax rates, they're very inclined to be supportive. And so that's going to be your challenge. But just to summarize, because I don't like to leave people in with any doubt, the measure as it stands, I don't believe will pass unless you can absolutely persuade people and your campaign is focused on the message point that it will not increase their property tax rates. So I hope that was useful to you. Probably not an unexpected outcome, but I think it's good for you to see that in black and white, and there's an exact game plan laid out on what has to be done. And that's it for me. And go ahead
Thank you.
and ask questions.
All righty. Thank you so much. Sean, did you have anything?
No, at this point, I appreciate JL's presentation and his insight on this. It's not a surprise. Frankly, I do think that if we want the measure to pass, we have information here that can help us do that, but we need to be very strategic. We need to be very thoughtful. We need to have a plan. And there's a lot of work to be done at this point that I think we're capable of doing.
All righty. Thank you.
And let me add I just want to add some color commentary, because I've personally been involved and consulted on the City of Salem infrastructure levy in 2022, in which our polling was just like this. It said it was not going to pass except if people learned that it would replace an existing levy. And the polling came back upside down like this, but the point was made and it was passed. Similar, we just did the Chemeketa Community College bond, same thing. It was $1.40. However, it replaced an existing bond. People did not like the measure because the measure, as it officially read, in fact, it failed the first time. We had to go out a second time for it because we did not adequately drive home the point the first time that it would be replacing an expiring bond. It passed the second time. So I just want to highlight, I personally have some experience with these types of results that require you to really drive home a certain point in order to make it work, although the initial polling did not look great.
All righty. Thank you. Is there, council, is there any questions or comments at this time with the information you just heard?
Yes, could I get your name again? The first speaker?
J.L. Wilson?
J.L. Wilson?
Correct.
Oh, okay. And I did have one quick question. On the back of this, where it lists the demographic totals,
Yes.
and it breaks down by party, Democrat, Republican, Independent. Are these numbers, do they reflect what percentage of Democrats, Republicans, and Independents are in Lebanon? How did you get that?
Yes, it reflects a breakdown of who shows up. And so just 30 seconds on that. And I said at the outset, I wanted to test as a basically what I would call it an R plus 12 or an R plus 13. And I think that we were in that ballpark. There are on the voter rolls, there are certainly more independents and non-affiliateds. However, they do not show up at the same rate as Republicans and Democrats on a general election. And that's how come their proportion of the electorate then shrinks up very significantly for what we call a likely voter sample. And so I think the actual number is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 33% Republican, 23% Democrat, and probably whatever the remainder is for non-affiliated, probably 40%. That non-affiliated number comes down significantly when we do a likely voter sample because they show up with less frequency in elections. So what you have in front of you is what I would say a good approximate for what the electorate would look like from a party standpoint.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question along those same lines. The voter history, the 1 of 4 versus 2 or 3 or 4 of 4, is that also, that's also an accurate representation of what we get here in Lebanon?
Typically, your typical 4 of 4 is going to be somewhere between 45 and 50% of your electorate. And then your next, I think your next biggest is going to be your 2 of 4. But yes, that is roughly that is roughly what you see in most communities, sort of in descending order. Your biggest bucket of voters are your voters that show up every time, and then it's sort of descending order. Your 3 of 4 is typically someone who has missed a primary election. Your 2 of 4 is generally somebody who sits out the primaries and just votes the general. And then your 1 of 4 is typically going to be reflected in your independent, non-affiliated, the people who are usually motivated by a presidential election, but typically don't vote down ballot, and don't tend to participate in anything other than the high level. So I look at that 1 of 4. You have to include them in your sample, but it's going to be a relatively small chunk, and it's typically going to be assigned to frankly, it's going to be assigned to independent, non-affiliated males is typically who that's going to represent.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to miss the math. How many people were attempted to contact to come up with this 296? Was that in there someplace?
No, and we would typically not share that information. I could say we pulled the voter file for the city of Lebanon, and it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 8,500 files. In rough terms, it was about 6,500 mobiles and 2,000 landline. And so that's that makes getting a 300 sample a little tough. It's doable, but it's a little tough. You have to work a little more for it, which you'll see because we were in the field longer than I would have liked over the course of probably 4 or 5 days. Typically, we like to get our sample over the course of 2 nights, but in smaller communities, it's a little tougher.
I get it. I'm just curious I'm just going with today. If you called me, I wouldn't answer.
Sure.
And I just trying to figure out how many people just said, yeah, I'm not listening. because they never heard the message in the first place. 296 people, I get it, a sample size, and you did a great job of breaking it down, but I'm not sure how well that really affects the people like me who wouldn't have answered the phone call in the first place. No offense, I just wouldn't.
Oh, I hear it all the time. All I can say is it's a scientific representative sample that I think you'll find to be remarkably accurate within the error rate of 5.7%.
I hear you.
Okay, I have a question. From the initial ballot, initial ballot question to the informed ballot, obviously we saw that decrease. And it doesn't look like one particular question really brought it. What would you attribute to that decrease to? Do you have any
Yes,
tea leaves you can share with us?
Yeah, it's the confusion. It's the confusion of having heard that their taxes wouldn't be increased, and then getting the ballot question that says it's $1 per thousand. And people are like, wait a second. I thought I just heard that my taxes wouldn't increase. And now you're telling me it's $1 per thousand. You have to do it that way because that's exactly how they're going to see it on the ballot. And so this is the purest, facsimile of what they're actually going to see. So what I think happened is you saw more people park their vote in the unsure because they thought they were sure of something, which is that it wouldn't increase their tax, but the question was asked, it would cost $1 per thousand. So that's in my experience, that's what happened.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got a question on this. So what was the time frame that the questions were being asked and you're getting your responses? And the reason I'm asking is gas prices have gone up dramatically this month. And I would imagine that as the price at the pump was increasing, there may have been a change in response to people surveyed financially.
I think that's a great observation. I can't account for every outside variable with respect.
Right, and I understand that.
But I don't disagree with you at all that it may have created some downward pressure on the approval response.
The takeaway that I have from the results that you've given us, and I think you did a very good job queuing up the questions to get a good sample result from the people you're talking to. But the takeaway I have is people want to support the jail, but they're not sure that they can afford it.
That's exactly right.
And I think given kind of, the direct price of gas on people's income and global uncertainty and all the rest of that, I don't know how supportive people would be to vote for this thing, especially with some of the cumbersome language that you're talking about. You got to make sure that people understand what it means when they're reading it in the text on the ballot. So does that ring true with you?
I think you're exactly right, and I think you're basically restating my conclusion, which is on balance, and you identified an external pressure that was happening during the time that the survey was administered. On balance, people don't think that they can afford it, and when they are given the piece of information that it actually doesn't increase their taxes, then they say, okay, I can do that. Your job is to make that argument. You're going to have a lot of options available to you to make the argument, all the way from your signage to your voters pamphlet statements, to whatever collateral material, to whatever. You're going to be in the business of repeating 2 or 3 key arguments. What I'm suggesting is your first argument has to be, will not increase your property tax rate. And that if people don't absorb that piece of information, you won't be successful. But you do have the opportunity to successfully do that.
God, I'd say none of this information really surprises me as it's put out. I knew this was a sell, and it wasn't going to be an easy one, but it's one that's worth the fight to me. I think that doesn't surprise anybody that sits on this council.
I actually agree. As someone who works in communications and in messaging, I feel like sticking to the message of having people understand that this is not increasing their taxes, that this is at a time when the bond falls off and the levy could go on, like, and then also seeing, it was the question about repeat offenders, number 8, seeing how that polled, that seems to be a critical piece of the messaging too. Obviously not the primary, but a secondary. I mean, if we do the work, I feel like this could pass, but I understand the data that's in front of us as well and understand the amount of work that it would take for it to pass.
Any other questions? Comments? All righty, this will be coming back. Thank you, JL and Sean. Appreciate your time and your information on this polling. So,
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.
of course, this is information only for tonight. It's coming back on the April 8th agenda for the council to make a decision. So we wasn't really debating it tonight or anything like this. Take this information, absorb it.
I do have, probably for Ron or Brandon, will we be in competition with any other tax changes in November?
Tax changes.
Levies or bonds?
Other districts?
Yeah,
It's potential that we could be, I don't know, I know Lebanon Fire, we saw an article today, Brandon and I did, that they're either May or November, so there's potential there, right?
Yeah.
There is potential there.
I mean, that's another factor to consider is just if you see a bunch of bond measures or levies on a ballot, sometimes just the default is just to say no. If you're in the mood to say no to one, you might get more negative result. But that's just a guess on my part.
I think that's human nature. Makes sense.
The one question that I have, which I understand the polling data that he had, we need to make sure that however we strategize this in terms of it won't increase your property taxes. Well, property taxes increase every year 3%. So we want to make sure that this is not an additional, somehow, I was sitting here thinking about that the last thing you want is the jail levy to pass and all of a sudden, people don't understand the 3% increase and it looks like we've increased their taxes.
Oh, yeah.
So, because that does happen on a yearly basis.
Yep.
So we need to find a way to message that, and I'm not sure what that looks like.
Well, that would be, if it was to pass and the general obligation bond fell off. I know that the general obligation servicing of that debt is higher than what this levy would be, correct?
Correct.
Brandon, Finance Director?
That's correct.
Okay.
Can you remind us what that per thousand is on the general obligation bond? Is
It
like a buck
equates right
something?
now to about $1.17 per thousand is kind of where that's at. It ebbs and flows because we apply a flat rate, right? We have a debt payment to make, and so we say, here's what we need to collect. And so as far as, crunching that number, it amounts to about $1.17 per thousand.
So 17 cents difference between the two.
Yeah.
Have you already done the math? What does that equate to on an average property tax bill? 17 cents times the 333,000 or whatever.
300. I thought we had
No,
that.
everybody
The
reaches for the
average we
calculator.
used was 385.
$65.45.
Yep, about that.
I'm not even the math person.
Just to
I'm not
clarify,
even
the
the
one
math
that's
person. I got the right
expiring,
number.
that's going to expire regardless as to whether or not this.
That's correct. Yeah, it's based solely on a debt service payment for the library and the Justice Center. It was a 20-year debt service, and that 20 years ends this next November.
Just
So-
acknowledging too that built this for $1, what is it, $1.17? I'm sure that wasn't.
$1.17 now,
Two
and that was certainly
buildings.
different 20 years ago.
I know, it just is,
Yeah.
just the point.
Is Sean still on with us?
It looks like he fell off.
Maybe, oh,
No, I'm here.
okay, maybe a question for Sean on this. We want to, when we make this decision, we kind of want to think not just short-term, 5 years, but long-term. Is it historically more difficult to get a levy passed the first time than the second time and third time and fourth time? Or is this going to be a battle every 5 years? Because when you're talking about creating jobs, you also have the risk in 5 years of those jobs being lost.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to. I mean, so I just don't have that crystal ball the same way you don't either. And think about what's happened in the last 6 months that's changed things globally, which has changed things locally. There's just a lot there's a lot of potential out there that we can't account for. My
And
personal opinion, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
I was only going to add a little bit, at least in this county, right? If you look at Lynn County's law enforcement levy, if you look at Sweet Home has had 2 long-term local option levies. They've had one for the police department and one for the library. Both of those have been in existence since the late 1980s even. And it was different back then, right? You didn't necessarily have to renew, but it has been renewed every 5 years after that point. So it is, I mean, at least here, right? Looking at our surrounding communities, it seems likely that once it's passed and once it's on the docket and on the books, it's likely to stay, but that is not a guarantee.
People are more willing to support it when it's already.
Because it's already baked into what they expect every year on their property tax bill at that point.
Right.
Well, and realistically, everybody knows my opinion on this, but we're trying to do what's best for the city. If we put that in place, I'm convinced that it would pay for itself. The value would be there. The police would be able to do a better job. We'd be using a facility that's sitting there empty. The recidivism and the revolving door that I've seen in the police station and in the courts would stop that. And that's part of the message we have to get to people. That $1, if I say I got to pay $1, I'm going to instinctively say, I don't want to pay $1. But you got to, anyway, we got this data to us, we have to sell it to them. And we have to be convinced, I'm convinced that it works, but I'm one person. We're deciding this as a body, right? And I think we all support it, but we're realistic.
Well, speaking on your point about messaging, so far, I'm kind of trying to look at the big picture here. Our messaging is strictly on funds and reopening the jail right now. But we haven't been talking about this is a way to lower crime or maybe to enhance our technology, like purchase a drone or something like that. I think our messaging should include a lot more than just, money for the jail. It should include some other topics.
I think the levy would be specific to reopening the jail. And then if that's the case, we couldn't use it for things like purchasing drone unless it was used for the jail. Am I correct on this, Trey?
Well, yeah, that was my understanding, not exactly what the point I was going to respond to, but yes, I do believe you're correct.
Okay.
What I was going to point out is 100% right. And I mean, once we get, if there's the go-ahead on this, I'm going to pull statistics out of our court system. And I mean, the statistics and the information is going to be staggering to people about the recidivist, how often they're in and out, and literally, laughing as they walk out the door because they know they're never going to pay the fine anyways, and that's all we can do.
Absolutely.
And that message is going to be strong, and it'll just be the fact that we need to get it out there. And there's also plenty of evidence. I was at I did a Citizens Academy with our district attorney, Doug Martini, and some of the charts he had were absolutely fascinating with the correlation between incarceration and crime. And, people that seem to think at certain times that there's no correlation, and the facts in the data just absolutely shows that's not true. And I've already reached out to him to get some of those charts and kind of show, because they had the big increase hard on crime in the 80s, middle 80s or whatever, and here we go, crime goes down, and then they hit that point where it's, we don't want to be that hard. And the incarceration rates go back down and the crime goes back up. I mean, it's irrefutable. And given the fact that, we don't have any place to incarcerate them, because of the sheriff's, the Lynn County Jail being as full as it is, and we understand that they have to prioritize, more serious crimes. But the ability of us to try to actually influence people to stop doing what they're doing is almost nil at this point. And the fact is that the statistics will show that, and I'll be very involved in whatever committee's put together to make sure we get that message out.
So one of the things, looking back at what JL said tonight, is to stay on message, right? His message was really clear. There's those two places that you saw your numbers just extremely explode. And that was that there's no cost to them, right? And what was the other one? What was the other question?
Number
Catch
8,
and release.
reduce repeat
Yes.
offenses.
And so
recidivism.
those probably would be the two primary pieces of information. All that other information is great. I mean, I think it gives you more context of why you're opening the jail, but it looks like those two items would be where you want to really message with what the poll came back as.
I'll talk to people about this subject. I've talked to a lot of people about this subject lately. And what I tell them is that we as a council have held off on this issue for 3 years because we want to be good stewards of the money. Okay? We were waiting for a general obligation bond to fall off. And what that gives us the opportunity to do is increase services while keeping our tax obligations as low as possible, right? And every single person I talk to that I say that messaging to goes, oh, cool, yeah, they're for it. And the two questions, I can't remember, the one that Ron just referred to, that is the message. If you can get that out and get that implanted in voters' heads, they will pass it. That's a lot of work, a ton of work.
Well, I would think we went into this with our eyes open for that.
What's that?
I think we went into this with our eyes
No,
open for that.
I'm just saying.
But yes, that is a great
I'm just
message.
reiterating, that's a lot of work. So that mechanism, whatever is going to promote this, has to be well-oiled machine, and there's going to be a lot of labor going into it to get the message out. If we're not willing to do that, I'll say it. If we're not willing to do that, there's no point in pursuing it.
Well,
That is a 100% requirement.
The person that you're going to have to convince is the voter that didn't really know that the jail was closed. They're too busy working to do what their house hasn't been broken into. They're paying more money at the gas pump, et cetera. They're hurting financially. That's why they're working as many hours as they are. And to them, they're looking at this and saying, you know what? I can't afford that. I'll take my chances. It hasn't happened to me. I think I'll be okay. That's the person that you're going to have to make this personal to say, hey, look, this recidivism rate, the homelessness with criminality attached to it, it is a problem for you, and this is a solution that will impact you. That's the person that we got to convince.
And I don't disagree with that. My whole point of what I was saying is the dedication to and the work that it's going to take is going to be extremely high.
Yeah.
And people need to realize that as we go forward with this. If the council on the 8th of April decides to move forward on this, they need to move forward with a commitment of making it happen, not I'll see what I can do, because that will be irresponsible on our part if we do that. So.
I think that's also one, why I wanted to make sure that we were all here for that vote where we decided to even spend this money on a pollster, on a consultant to walk us through this process. So we all are going through this with our eyes open. And I would hope, however, whatever happens on the 8th, again, that we're working together as one, because this can't, I've said it before, but it cannot be on staff. It has to be on this group and us with our public official hats out there, and it can't be Ron and it can't be Frank. So, and certainly not Julie or Brandon. While they can provide us the information, it really just has to be us. So I just wanted to repeat that again.
Yeah, one last comment or question I have on this. So obviously things went wrong and the jail got closed. Nobody expected that. With this new funding package, how confident do we feel that that is well protected against future economic things that could threaten that thing from closing again?
Well, so the reason that jail closed originally is we never had dedicated correction staff. It was done by patrol, right? So with the levy that could potentially go out, you're looking at dedicated correction staff and a dedicated supervisor for that. So when we looked at the numbers for the levy, we looked at it throughout a 5-year period. What's it going to take? Insurance requirements, medical requirements, food, you name it, and employee costs. And that's how we came to the number of the $1.7 million. So unless there's, I mean, I'm trying to think of a situation that would, can you think of a situation that would all of a sudden we couldn't collect up to that? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, all of this is
Compression,
based
maybe?
on estimates, right? And so, if we get in here and for some reason wages are significantly higher than what we've projected, I don't think that'll be the case because we've done kind of the analysis to determine where are things right now, and then we are using the same information and modeling that we use for the rest of our 5-year forecasts. I mean, this is fairly well thought out, but again, 5 years from now, something can change. I couldn't tell you necessarily what it would be. It would just be, the 5-year picture fell a little lower than what actual reality came in at.
if you had a huge economic crash where people aren't paying their property taxes,
You got more problems than that.
yeah, absolutely. But that would be one scenario where I think you could see that happen, which right, we've probably got more problems than just that.
Well, as every Lebanon guy, my feeling is, I'm committed to it. I will be at any meeting, any event we have for this. I'm committed to it. But for me, $385, and I said the same thing with something else. If $385, there's a lot of people who haven't been affected. There's a lot of people who have been affected. I've lost more than $385 worth of property. If I can tell the people, yes, you're getting some benefit for that. If it's less than my homeowner's insurance deductible and somebody stole my bike 3 times, that's where the difference is. And the fact that we have to convince people that we're going to have the police out there serving you better. I went on a ride along. It was great. Thank you for doing that. It was very informational. I loved it. Those guys, I sat there and talked to the team leader about a guy that he was telling me this guy had done this over and over, and he's going to over and over. And I happened to explain hey, we had a guy at the credit union who put a filing cabinet in our tree. He said, that's him. I guarantee you that's him. So this guy is out there. It's not once, it's not twice. He's cost hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars without any penalty to our community for years, for 3 years now. So I'm passionate enough about it, obviously, that I want to be involved. Now, we're not debating it now, and I'll be just as passionate when we come back the 8th. But like I said, the numbers don't surprise me. We are always going to have to sell this to people.
Mr. Mayor, if I could say one more thing.
Yes, please.
And I think there's an opportunity that we can't count on, but I think is fairly likely, is that there will be other set-off in cost. In other words, I've had previous conversations after having discussions with the chief with other communities, as far as other communities also have issues as it relates to getting enough beds. Sweet Home has issues. Even Albany has issues sometimes with beds at Lynn County, in Brownsville, and other things. And we also, I think, at one point when the jail was open, were leasing some bed spaces to, was it probation, the probation department, and Albany. So we can't count on that coming in, but it is, if we open this, we're going to try to make sure that, if we have 8 beds, we want 8 beds full. First with Lebanon, for sure, but also, if they're there, hey, and we need to enter into contracts with other communities to and they pay for it, to offset some of the costs. So in my mind, it's more likely that there's going to be less cost than we anticipate, but I agree that we can't count on them at this point.
And I should add that, what this $1.7 million we've calculated here is a full assumption that we are the only ones operating, right? It is our people in there. We're not getting revenue from other sources. And if we did start to take other revenue, right, we would have to, when you set these levies in motion and when you have them on the books, you can levy up to the certain threshold, right? And so in reality, what we've done is the dollar per thousand is what you need by the time you get to the end of the 5-year picture. But in the first year, we're not going to levy the full dollar because we won't need to in order to maintain what we need to have to bring these folks on. If we started getting revenue from other sources, we can further ratchet that back so that it's not on our taxpayers, and we're not just taking the revenue from that we get and sticking it over in the general fund and saying, look, it's free money, right? That's something we need to make clear is we can make those revisions. Certainly that's a council decision, right? So maybe you do decide you're going to use that for other sources, whether that's building upgrades in the jail or other things, but our recommendation certainly is going to be that money stays with the jail and then you levy appropriately to ensure that we're not necessarily overtaxing the community.
Alrighty, thank you. As I said before, take all this information, go home, and I know Councilor McLean will go home and he'll write out a book ready to debate this on the 8th. And I know Councilor Workman will do the same. And we should, and you should. You should do that. This is a serious subject. We need to have our information concise and to the point and well organized so we have a good debate. So.
Well, I'm going to commit Dave Workman to doing all this. So,
I believe my mouth has committed me to it already.
I have a question for Frank. If this levy passes, how soon after the vote will that jail reopen?
ASAP as possible. It's just a matter of once the it starts going in that direction, it's a matter of recruitment and getting the proper people in there to work it.
So we don't have to wait for a tax cycle to go through for the money to be there or nothing like that. It's just
that's more of a Brandon question than it is a Frank question.
Once this was out there and if the levy passed, then you've got from that November election until November the following year before we start seeing property taxes come in. The council has the decision at that point to start tapping one-time funds to start accelerating, right? Start the hiring process, start all this. So you'd have to use available dollars to kick that off, or waiting until you get to that fiscal year. So there's either an 8-month delay before we could start hiring if you wait until the July and when you start to see that stuff kind of kick onto the books. You could choose to start using one-time funds in advance of that to start the hiring and make sure that we get training and everything done so you are running forward as soon as July 1 comes around. But we wouldn't actually start seeing property tax revenue until the November. So if you go November 2026, we'll see property tax revenue in November 2027.
But speed to market on this, for lack of a better term, is going to be important. We could one-time fund and then pay it back with that tax money. I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's effectively what you're saying.
Effectively, yes. I mean, you need it for the operation, right? So if we start hiring in advance of what we've done is assume, a full fiscal year. So July 1 of 2027 to June 30 of 2028 will cost you X. And that's like 1.4, essentially. I think I'd have to go back to, but in that 1.5 range. And so if you start burning money early, you're not getting any money to pay it back, right? Because this assumes that the levy comes on board and the property tax generation covers the one fiscal year. So if you start 6 or 8 months before that, you're burning cash that you can't put back.
I don't completely understand that, but I'll leave that to the accountant.
It's
Why
just based on,
why did you mention that we could use one-time funds then?
because you can use one-time funds. It just means that
But you can't put it back?
You can't put it back because unless you're going to add to the levy cost, right? So if, say, the first year, the first 12-month cycle beginning in July, it costs, with staff time, insurance, and everything else, it costs you $1.5 million. If you start in advance of that July, you're going to start hiring people on and bringing people on early, which means you're eating more than that $1.5 million. But the levy has been designed to only bring you in that $1.5 million. So it really, timing wise, it depends on, are you going to eat some of the general fund's reserves, which as we go through budget and everything else, you can kind of look and see what money might exist and what we could potentially do with it. But if you start early before the property tax proceeds start to come in and you design the levy for a certain amount, you're going to be stuck with either waiting or burning cash beforehand.
I got you.
Well, we still have the money from the sale of the train station, right?
I mean, the sale hasn't completed, so not yet, but you could potentially, once that was completed, earmark it for that.
All righty. Let's move on. Is there any other items from council? Go ahead.
I'm not counsel, but I have one item. Just kind of an update. We are applying for a Connect Oregon grant with Western U. We're doing a joint application with them. Our portion of that is, it's kind of a weird setup, but it's 3 years worth of an intern, an engineering intern to help with the construction of their first phase. No cost to the city, but just wanted to bring it up because I'm sure they will bring it up. That goes out Friday, I think, for a Connect Oregon grant. So just letting you know.
All righty. Any other items from council? Okay. Anybody from the public or press that would like to have comments? Next scheduled council meeting be